She was a woman of wealth, power, and influence. A millionaire whose fortune gave her everything but freedom. Bound to her wheelchair, she was used to people bowing to her money, not daring to challenge her pride. But then, in the middle of a quiet afternoon, a frail black boy appeared at her gate, hungry and desperate, offering something no one else ever had. His price? Just a few leftovers. His promise? To heal her broken body. She laughed in his face, certain it was nothing but a child's foolishness. But what happened next would shake her world and silence her doubts forever. The millionaire's mansion stood tall, surrounded by manicured gardens and towering gates that separated her world from everyone else's. Inside, life was lavish, yet hollow. Once a fierce businesswoman who conquered boardrooms and shaped industries, she was now confined to her wheelchair after an accident that left her paralyzed. Her days blurred into one another. Endless staff, endless wealth, yet no real connection. Servants moved about quietly, afraid of her sharp tongue and quick judgments. She had grown cold, hardened by her loss of mobility, and found a cruel sense of control in mocking others who seemed weak. To her, life was a game of power, those who had it and those who didn't. But beyond her gates, a very different story unfolded. A young black boy wandered the streets, stomach empty, eyes searching for scraps to survive another day. Life had shown him little kindness, yet his spirit carried something unusual, an unshakable belief in possibilities unseen. Where others saw despair, he saw hope. Where others begged, he offered something in return. On that fateful afternoon, he gathered enough courage to step up to the grand gates of the mansion. His clothes were worn, his body thin, yet his eyes glowed with a quiet determination. He did not come to steal or plead, he came to strike a bargain. When the millionaire first laid eyes on him, she saw nothing more than a poor child looking for food. But little did she know, this boy was about to challenge everything she thought she knew about life, healing, and the power of faith. The boy stood at the entrance, the gates towering above him like the walls of a fortress. The guards hesitated at first, unsure whether to chase him away or let him speak. His request was unusual, not a plea for money, not a cry for pity. Instead, he simply asked for leftover food. But before anyone could dismiss him, he added something that made everyone pause. "I'll heal her." Word of his strange claim spread quickly inside the mansion. The staff whispered nervously, afraid their mistress might erupt in anger if she heard. But curiosity won. Soon the boy was brought before the millionaire herself. She sat in her grand living room, her chair surrounded by luxury that only deepened the silence of her confinement. When the boy's words reached her, she laughed, cold, sharp, and dismissive. A child offering to heal her in exchange for leftovers? It was absurd, almost insulting. For years she had tried every doctor, every treatment money could buy. Nothing had worked. And now this boy, ragged and hungry, dared to claim he could do what the world's finest could not? Still, something in his eyes unsettled her. There was no desperation, no fear. He looked at her as though he saw more, not the cruel woman in a wheelchair, but someone who could still stand, still live. That unwavering gaze disturbed her more than his words. Determined to mock him, she agreed. With a smirk, she instructed her staff to give him a small plate of scraps, as though rewarding a child's imagination. She wanted to humiliate him, to watch his hopeful expression fade when nothing changed. But the boy accepted the plate without hesitation. Instead of eating, he placed his hands together, closed his eyes, and began to speak softly, not in the language of science or medicine, but in the language of faith. His words were quiet, yet they carried an energy that filled the room. The air seemed to shift, heavy and alive, as though something unseen had entered with him. The staff exchanged nervous glances. The millionaire rolled her eyes at first, but then something stirred. A warmth spread slowly through her body, so faint she almost dismissed it. But it was there, undeniable, reaching places that had been numb for years. Her laughter faltered. The boy's prayer continued, steady and unshaken. And for the first time in years, the millionaire felt something she had long buried: hope. The room fell into a silence so thick that even the ticking of the ornate grandfather clock seemed to vanish. The millionaire's smirk had long disappeared, replaced by a look of disbelief as the warmth in her legs intensified. For years she had been paralyzed, confined, trapped, and bitter. Now, against everything she thought possible, sensation was returning. Her fingers gripped the arms of her wheelchair, trembling. The boy's soft murmur of faith didn't falter. Each word seemed to carry weight, echoing louder in her soul than in her ears. Suddenly, a sharp jolt surged through her body, not pain, but strength unfamiliar and overwhelming. She gasped, clutching the chair as tears filled her eyes. The staff stood frozen, their eyes wide in shock. Some clutched their mouths, others stepped back in fear as if they were witnessing something beyond human understanding. A woman who had tormented them for years, a woman who ridiculed every plea for compassion, was changing before their eyes. Her heart raced. Slowly, hesitantly, she pressed her palms against the arms of the chair and pushed. For a moment, her legs wobbled like fragile glass ready to shatter. But then, she rose. A stunned cry escaped her lips as her body, weak but steady, stood upright. For the first time in years, gasps and sobs erupted around the room. One of the maids dropped the plate she was holding, the crash echoing like thunder. The millionaire looked down at her own feet, her mind reeling. She was standing. Her arrogance crumbled. She turned toward the boy, who still held the same calm, steady gaze. He had asked for nothing more than leftovers, yet had given her what money, power, and influence could not. The woman who once laughed now fell to her knees, not from weakness, but from something far greater: humility. For the first time in her life, she realized she wasn't untouchable, she wasn't invincible, and she wasn't above those she had looked down upon. The boy had healed more than her body. He had broken her pride. The atmosphere in the mansion shifted completely. The same walls that had once echoed with orders, mockery, and cold silence now vibrated with awe. The millionaire, who had been known for her cruelty and sharp tongue, remained on her knees before the young boy who had asked for nothing more than scraps of food. For the first time, she was not the one being served. She was the one humbled. Her staff, who had endured years of disdain, looked on in disbelief. Many of them had fantasized about the day she might show kindness, but none could have imagined this moment. The most powerful woman they knew bowing in gratitude to a hungry boy. It was as if the universe itself had chosen him to deliver a lesson she could never ignore. The boy's eyes remained calm, untouched by pride or malice. He had been mocked, laughed at, and disregarded, yet he had answered cruelty with compassion. He didn't gloat. He didn't remind her of her cruelty. He simply stood quietly, as though the healing he had given her was not his doing, but a gift he had been entrusted to share. The millionaire wept openly. Her tears stained the marble floor as she whispered apologies to the boy, to her staff, and perhaps even to herself. For years she had hidden her pain behind arrogance, lashing out at others because she believed her wealth gave her that right. But now, as she stood on her own legs for the first time in years, she realized it had been her heart that was paralyzed all along. Slowly, she extended her hand to the boy, not in superiority, but in thanks. And in that simple gesture, the power dynamic shifted forever. The boy had shown her that true strength is not measured in money, influence, or control, but in the ability to lift others, even when they've tried to push you down. The story spread far beyond her mansion walls. Whispers of what happened traveled through the community, then across the city. People marveled not at the miracle of her healing, but at the transformation of a heart once hardened by bitterness. The boy, once invisible to society, had become a living reminder that greatness often comes from the places we least expect. And so, her legacy changed. No longer remembered only as the cold, untouchable millionaire, she became the woman who had been humbled by a child's compassion. For the rest of her life, she carried that day as a reminder that even the smallest acts of faith and kindness can spark the most extraordinary changes. Because in the end, the greatest healing wasn't what happened to her legs. It was what happened to her soul. And maybe that's the question for all of us. When faced with cruelty, will we choose to respond with pride or with compassion that can change everything?